I had a total hip replacement 2 years ago. Before my surgery, I was a runner. Today, I'm still a runner, and I have my doctor's approval to do that. Hi, I'm Pamela. In this video, I'll talk to you about why my doctor said I can run after my hip replacement. I'll talk to you about the pain that I've had running since my hip replacement. And I'll also talk to you about my plans for running into the future. Here's a little bit of background. In 2021, I was training for a half marathon. I have run many half marathons and my training was going as scheduled. But then all of a sudden, I started to have hip pain. That pain did not go away. And so I found myself in a cycle of seeing different physical therapists, which progressed to me seeing different doctors. That led me to having different sets of x-rays and then ultimately an MRI. And that's kind of what sealed the deal, where I got the information that I needed to have a total hip replacement. I really did not want to have a hip replacement. I was 55 that year. I felt like I was way too young. And everybody knows you can't run after a hip replacement. Friends, physical therapists, and even doctors told me that. I finally found a doctor that I liked, and I scheduled the surgery. What was it that I liked about that doctor? He's the one who told me no problem with me running after my hip replacement. Before I get into that, please know I am not a medical professional. Always check with your medical professional for advice that is specific just to you. Altogether, I saw 3 orthopedic surgeons. By the time that I went to see doctor number 3, I had kind of accepted the fact that I would not be able to run after my hip replacement, because that's certainly what doctor number 1 and doctor number 2 told me. He told me that the general consensus is evolving, particularly with younger patients, and the viewpoint is now to allow patients to return to the activities they love, including running. He did tell me he would not recommend somebody who had never been a runner to all of a sudden start running after their total hip replacement. But for many of his patients who were already runners, he was fine with them running after the surgery. Here's where the concern comes from. The implant that my doctor used for me had a plastic cup that he put into my pelvis with a ceramic ball that was attached to a titanium stem that went into my thigh bone, my femur. It's that plastic cup that the concern is will start to wear down over the course of time. My doctor told me that because I am a runner, periodically they will do x-rays on my hip to see if that plastic cup is deteriorating. He said if it does start to deteriorate at some point in the future, that's the time to have a different conversation about is running perhaps no longer going to be available to me at that point. The other thing that he said to me, which may not be appropriate for many people, is he said, "Hey, Pamela, you're a small person." He said, "I have people that walk into my doctor's office and they put more pressure on that plastic cup just walking than you ever would do running." There isn't a whole lot of research out there about runners who've had hip replacements. Just so you know, I'm actually trying to gather some of that research and put it together in a video format to share with you. So if you aren't already subscribed to my channel, go ahead and subscribe right now and click the bell icon so that way you'll be notified when I do have that video released. Now I want to talk to you about pain that I've had running after my hip replacement. My doctor promised I'd be running 3 months after my surgery, so I took him for what he said. In the probably month 2.5 or so, I started incorporating just a little bit of joggy jog into my walks and was alternating jogging for maybe 30 seconds or 1 minute and then walking for 4 or 5 minutes. That seemed to be going fairly well, and that was my plan for my first 5K that I planned on doing 3 months after the surgery. And in case you aren't aware of it, a 5K is 3.1 miles. However, like many plans, the plan was great, but reality was very different. For whatever reason, the morning of the race, when I was trying to do just those little 30-second or 1-minute running intervals, it just felt like that titanium rod was just banging into my femur, and it was extremely painful, which was frustrating because I didn't have that pain earlier when I was doing kind of trial runs. So I basically walked the entire 5K, but I was still really happy about it because for me that was a huge milestone because I hadn't run for at least a year prior to my surgery because I was having a lot of problems and was physically unable to run. So at least being out there in an environment with other runners, my family was with me, that really felt like a huge accomplishment. By 5 months after the surgery, I ran another 5K, felt great, and immediately signed up for a half marathon that was about 14 months after my surgery. A half marathon is 13.1 miles or about 21 kilometers. Now, in my running life, I've run many half marathons, so I knew how to train for one, and I followed the same type of training plan for this half marathon as I did for all the other ones that I did. But this first one after my surgery was also very special to me. My son ran it with me. It was his first half marathon. My partner ran it with me. It was his first half marathon. We had a group of friends and family members all enjoying the great day. However, the pain that I had in my hip that originally sent me to the doctor a year and a half prior came back. I talk about that pain in the very first video I created for this channel. So if that's something that you're interested in, I have a link to that video in the notes under this video. When I recorded that very first video, it was probably about 10 months after my surgery. At that point, that pain was gone. So why did it come back? I went back to doctor number 3. He took more x-rays. He said my hip was perfectly fine. He had no clue why I was having that pain. So I went to another physical therapist. That physical therapist did a really good examination, and he told me the pain that I had experienced before my surgery, immediately after my surgery, and then 14 months later wasn't actually in my hip. The pain was in my groin. Come to find out, all along I had been describing the pain wrong. Maybe as a woman, I just tend not to use the word groin very often to describe my body parts. But what he told me I had was something that's commonly referred to as a sports hernia, which is not the type of hernia that you hear of, people getting because they're lifting a heavy box and then all of a sudden they've got pain. It's really more like a strained muscle in my groin area. Apparently, one of the challenges with strained muscles is they can take a really long time to heal. And then after they do heal, they tend to come back and start hurting again. And that's exactly what happened to me. Now, coincidentally, at the same time when I was doing that first half marathon, I was also participating at the very beginning of a 6-month yoga teacher training program. I have a lot of experience doing yoga, but in this particular training program, we actually spent a lot of time sitting cross-legged on the floor, listening to other people talking about how to teach yoga classes. And based on my conversation with my physical therapist, it probably was me sitting cross-legged that reactivated the pain that I had in what I thought was my hip, but actually was my groin. As I just mentioned, doctor number 3, he's kind of the chainsaw and jackhammer type guy. He's not the muscle guy. He didn't know how to help me. So then I went to go see doctor number 4, who is a specialist in sports injuries. He did an ultrasound on my hip/groin area, and he said, yes, he could see the inflammation. He also said that I had an issue with my IT band, which is on the outside of the thigh muscle. Now, I kind of sort of knew that I had some pain on the outside of my thigh, but because I was so frustrated and focused on the pain on my groin, which is the same pain I had before my surgery, I really didn't think much about the pain that I had on the outside of my thigh. Because of all the running that I was doing prior to my half marathon, I'm also kind of flirting with a little bit of plantar fasciitis on my left foot. More on my left foot. I have a little tiny bit on my right foot. And then my big toe on my left foot, for some reason, is acting up. I don't know if it's arthritis or if it's some type of strained tendon or ligament or something like that. Now, all of those painful things are all on my left leg. And it was my left hip that had the replacement on it. Now, the thing is, I've been a runner for a pretty long time. And if you are a runner, you get it. Things hurt. IT band issues are very common for runners. Plantar fasciitis, very common for runners. Strained muscles, very common for runners. When I had my surgery, my doctor let me know that for years, if not decades, if not the majority of my life, my left hip was lower than my right hip. And what he told me before the surgery is, hey, Pamela, I'm going to fix that. When you get out of your surgery and as you're going through the first weeks and months of your recovery, you're going to think your left leg is longer than your right one. It will not be. We'll verify that with x-rays during the surgery, but it's going to feel that way because your body geometry is going to go from being crooked to being straight. So if you can kind of sort of imagine what that might be like, all of a sudden, all those muscles on my left side of my leg that were used to operating when my body was a little bit crooked, when it's put straight, all of a sudden now there are stretching and they're working in ways that they hadn't been working for years, if not decades. And I personally think a lot of that contributed to some of the pain that I had when I was training for that half marathon. And to be honest, still have a little bit now. So I've got a strained groin. I'm still having some type of pain on my left hip/groin area, quadricep, as well as my left foot. What's going on with me in running? To be honest, after that half marathon, I kind of lost a little bit of enthusiasm for running, not because of the pain, but I was really getting deep into yoga at that point. And then my yoga teacher training program was finished in the summertime. And then it was hot, and I don't like to run when it's hot. And then it was fall, and I was traveling, and then it was Christmas, and blah, blah, blah. I had all kinds of good reasons to not run in a way that was going to get me to my next race. I was still kind of running once or twice a week, but certainly not at the intensity that I needed to do to train for a half marathon or even really for a 5K. But my son, who completed his first half marathon with me last year, he competed in his first triathlon last week. And a triathlon is you swim, then you ride your bicycle, and then you run. I had never been to a triathlon in person, and I kind of thought, well, I can swim, I can ride a bike, and I can run. Maybe I can do a triathlon. But then after kind of witnessing the chaos that the whole experience was, I decided that was not for me. However, he decided it is definitely for him, and he has now registered for an Ironman triathlon, which is a much longer process of those same 3 events. While I don't see myself doing a triathlon anytime in the near future, his enthusiasm for his sport has really kind of reignited my enthusiasm for my sport. I am back on a consistent running schedule. I have my eye on a half marathon that's in about 5 months. If I'm sticking with my schedule, running through the heat of the summer, because at the time that I'm creating this video, it's actually early May, which means it's going to be July soon enough. But if I stick with my training program, I should be fine to do that half marathon. And then I do have kind of in the back of my head thinking it would be a really nice kind of icing on the cake if I ran another marathon. Back in the day, I ran marathons. I've done 3 of those. They are excruciating when it comes to the training. Training for a full marathon is almost like having a part-time job. But now I'm kind of basically retired, so I do have time to train for a full marathon. So stay tuned. I will let you know how my training goes for that if I do the full marathon. But I am pretty committed to doing the half one, and I will be sure to update everybody on that. Here's where I need your help, though. I need motivation. If you've already had a hip replacement, do me a favor, put in the comments below this video if you've gotten to a point where you're able to resume the activities that you loved before your hip replacement. It doesn't have to be running or doing triathlons. It could be playing with your grandchildren or walking your dog or traveling perhaps. Or if you haven't yet had a hip replacement, but you are facing one, let me know what activities you've stopped because of problems with your hip that you're looking forward to enjoying again after your hip is healed. Your comments actually mean a lot to me. At the time that I'm creating this video, my channel is still manageable enough for me to read and respond to every single comment. And I love hearing from you because it makes me feel like that I'm not alone in my journey with my hip replacement. If you found this video interesting, please click the like button and subscribe to this channel so that way you can be notified when I create more videos in the future. See you next time.